I am actually listening to a book, an audio book called Will Prevail by Kerry Muhlestein. I want to share with you a quote from his book, God Will Prevail, where he talks about the birthright and actually shows us why we refer to Jesus Christ as our Redeemer. He says, and by the way, this is in chapter 6 of that book by Kerry Muhlestein. He says, in order to understand birthright blessings properly, we will need to unlearn some of what we typically think of and instead come to see the birthright in the way that it was intended to be viewed. In an ancient Israelite family, the birthright son was receiving a call to leadership. Unfortunately, because of the influence of the world, we view leadership as a position of power or privilege. When we do so, we are like James and John, who asked if they could sit on the right and left hand of Christ. Christ's answer to them was instructive. He said, "Ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant." Here Christ taught what true leadership really is. Leadership is a call to service. It is not for the aggrandizement of the leader, but for the leader to accomplish God's will and serve God's children. Viewed correctly, leadership has no privilege. It also has no power over others. Rather, it has power on behalf of or for others. We are so saturated by the ideas of the world that it is difficult for us to think of leadership in any manner other than a worldly way. It is almost impossible for us to not think of it as power and privilege. It is only as we come to view it in a godly way that we can divest ourselves of this wrong view. Such a divestment of worldly ideas is not easy. This is why the great majority of the time, positions of leadership lead to one degree of unrighteous dominion or another. The natural man in us seems to take the opportunity to serve and turn it into something that would gratify our own vain ambitions. As a result, leadership often becomes a position of power and privilege. But it is not what it is intended to be. Just as a priesthood holder can only bless others, not himself, leadership is designed to be power and ability to serve others, not ourselves. This was the way reception of the birthright was supposed to operate. The birthright child received a double portion of the inheritance, or twice as much as everyone else. But this was not so that he could live more grandly. It was because of the birthright responsibilities. When the father died, it was incumbent upon the birthright son to take care of his mother. If any son in the family died before his wife, and while his children were young, the holder of the birthright was obligated to care for the widow and children. The birthright holder was supposed to use his extra portion to buy back family land or redeem enslaved family members. In other words, the birthright child received the inheritance necessary to do what would be asked of him. The birthright was not about privilege, but was about having the ability to serve, to do for others what needed to be done. The call to leadership was a call to service, and it is only the influence of the world that would cause either us or our Israelite ancestors to think of it in any other way. This view does not come as the result of making God the greatest influence in our lives. As Christ said, we must learn to not think about leadership the same way the Gentiles or non-covenant holders did. Of course, most of the time, covenant holders also thought of it incorrectly. But when we focus on our covenant connecting love for God and our fellow man, we think of leadership differently. There is a power in learning of birthright leadership. and their ability to redeem. In ancient times, when one could not repay a debt, filing bankruptcy was not an option. If the debt could not be paid, all property was sold until it was. If that did not satisfy the debt, the children, spouses, and self were sold to pay that debt. When this happened, any relative could buy all of it back, but it was the responsibility of the birthright son to do so. It did not matter how much the creditor wanted the new land or servants he had acquired. If a kinsman wanted to redeem them, he could not be refused. Such a kinsman was called a redeemer. As long as a redeemer was willing and able to buy back that which was lost, no property or person could be lost to the family. All would remain safe within the close family bonds. It is this law and viewpoint that caused Israel to refer to Jehovah as their Redeemer.